Last week, Viced Rhino did me the honor of letting me present a guest video on his channel. I took the opportunity to examine William Lane Craig's take on the Euthyphro dilemma, in the process explaining why it doesn't make sense to say morality is determined by God's nature. If you weren't aware of that video, you can go over to Mr. Rhino's channel and check it out. And while you're there, why not subscribe to him, since most of you probably haven't heard of him yet. But seriously, I really appreciate the opportunity, and for those of you who don't know, that's why I suddenly have a few hundred more subs. But today I want to spin off onto a related question. Namely, did God at any point have to decide his own nature was good? A commenter had posed this on another video several weeks ago, and I apologize for not citing him or her by name, but for the life of me I can't find the comment now. If you can tell me who you are and direct me to the text of the comment, I'll give you credit in the description box and on a future video. By the way, no cheating. I will look at the date of the comment. So again, I don't have the text of the comment in front of me, so I'm not sure exactly where the commenter's ideas end and mine begin. But here's the problem as I started to think through it. Did God ever ponder whether his own nature was moral? And when he created living beings, did he have to consider how any of his potential actions might impact his creation? Or, as an alternative, has he always simply acted according to his nature, never stopping to give thought to the consequences of his behavior? This cuts to the core of how morality is ever conceptualized and implemented. Before I act, I always try to consider how my behavior will affect myself and others. If it seems a possible action will be harmful, unfair, or otherwise disruptive to those around me, I will avoid it. And if a possible action will be helpful to others, then I am obligated to at least consider whether I should be expected to take it. Of course, there are all kinds of dilemmas and gray areas that arise when these principles are applied in real life, but in reality, the only value in any system of morality is in its ability to produce some desired outcome for the parties involved. This is the case even within the Christian moral framework, for while Christians may say God's commands define morality, even these commands just exist for the sake of a desired outcome, namely providing humans a better life on earth and a way to heaven, while providing God with glory and worship. This calls into question whether morality could conceivably just be God's essence, or some magical thing he filled the universe with, or whether it's a framework he would have had to develop upon creating people by deciding what he expected from them and what he might best do for them with their well-being in mind. And I want you to think about whether such a framework could exist when God lived alone from eternity past. With nobody to be impacted by his actions, would there be such a thing as morality except possibly as a meaningless hypothetical? It seems that there would not, and when creating people, God would either have had to think about how his actions impacted humans, in which case morality is something other than his nature, or just do whatever came naturally to himself, in which case we'd have to question whether this is any meaningful idea of morality at all. Of course, I could see a couple objections to this. You might say something along the lines of, it's in God's nature to love, or God's nature is such that he only wants good for others, and because such traits were built into him, he would never have to decide to be moral. But when you think about it, this is a really weird thing to say. God supposedly existed alone from eternity past. So why would his nature be defined by, or at least largely include, a description of how he interacts with things that never existed? Along with being an implausible idea, this takes us down the road of trying to picture how a being could have a nature that wasn't shaped by previous experiences and interactions. And once we reach the end of it, we find that the whole concept is silly. Really, the statement, God's core nature is such that he wants the best for me, is a shockingly egocentric one that reveals how people had themselves in mind before they conceived of God and how they defined him to meet their own needs. Of course, I guess one might counter that God's nature was populated with latent attributes such that, when presented with other beings, he would act with their best interest in mind without having to think about it. But even in this case, I would still find it troubling that he didn't think about it, and the best that can be said is we're really fucking lucky that his nature led him to be benevolent. And really, all this would mean is that God happened to align with morality. It doesn't explain how he defines it. Now, of course, I can't prove morality isn't something God magically created. I can't prove it isn't tied to his nature, and that if he happened to appreciate torture and rape and child abuse, then torture and rape and child abuse would be moral. I don't think anybody really believes that, at least not with any conviction, but I can't keep apologists from stalling the conversation by invoking it as a possibility. However, I think the scenario I brought up today helps make it clear that morality, once you give it any thought, is more likely an abstraction that exists outside God and is measured not by His nature, but by how our actions affect each other. As always, I want to thank my patrons. On the $20 Council of Zod level is the ever-mysterious Q. And here is the list of all my other wonderful patrons. I really appreciate all of your support. In the next couple days, I will be holding a drawing in which Q will have 4 entries, and Army of Zod patrons 01323132 will have 1 entry per my Patreon terms. The winner will receive a random curiosity or memento that may or may not have appeared in a video. If you want to join as a patron, you can find the link to my Patreon page below, as well as links to my Twitter, Facebook, and email. Thank you for watching, and Zod bless Krypton.